Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So, let me tell you where this comes from. Most images of African Americans today still come out of the politics of slavery. Now, when you think about the United States of America, and think about why people came over here, the notion of an ideology of freedom. And yet, when people are coming here for freedom, you have in the background the most sophisticated form of enslavement that the world has ever known, which is slavery, which is what built this country into a superpower it is today. So how did you bring into line the ideology of freedom with the reality of slavery? What you did is you redefined African Americans outside of human. So this was indeed freedom for human beings, but blacks, especially black sexuality, was more animalistic. And it was this notion of an animalistic black sexuality that legitimized getting African American men and women lynched, but especially men lynched. And also it legitimized the wholesale slavery of African American women. Because you see, the thing is, men have always raped women. We've just hidden it. But here you couldn't hide it, because on the plantation you had evidence of rape running around, because you had basically light-skinned African American babies. But you had 2 first-generation Africans on the plantation. So clearly something was going on. And so what did you say? Well, white men couldn't resist black women because they were animalistic in their sexuality, and it was her fault. The whore, the Jezebel, the slut. And it was a great way to turn reality on its head. And it still exists today. And black women to conform, if you notice, there is a hypersexualization to Rihanna, and now Beyonce. Have you noticed the colour of Beyonce's hair recently? She's shifting towards a more white image as well. And so black women have a very difficult time in white media, in a white control, because it is still white dominated and white controlled. Now for African American men it's very interesting, and there's a lot of written about hip hop and the politics of hip hop. Well, let me say, I am very aware of a lot of the kind of non-corporate hip hop and the more progressive, radical hip hop. But what's interesting is the vast majority of corporate-owned hip-hop is bought by white kids, white males. And is owned by the white corporations. And this is the image that whites like of black men. It legitimizes incredible amounts of incarceration because black men are thugs. And it has a profound effect on the black community. Because you see, 50 Cent and images like, and hip-hop artists like 50 Cent create a thug-like image which terrifies the police. And yet he walks around with bodyguards and lives in a gated community. It is young African-American boys and men on the street who have to deal with a trigger-happy, terrified white police force who pay the price of the thug image of 50 Cent. He's not paying the price. And it's no surprise that when you see what happens with African-American men when they get shot by police, I mean, they end up with not 1 or 2 bullets in them, but sometimes 20, 30, 40 bullets in. What's going on there? White boys don't end up with that many bullets. What is that overkill about? And part of it, not only, but part of it, is the images that circulate in white-owned media that define black men as thugs and has a profound effect on black men in the real world. Now let's talk about the body and what's happened and this notion, because let's think about the body is the only thing that you have to live in. And really, I would say most of us are at war with our bodies. And how can we not be, given the impossible image that we see here? And what's the big message always is the body is never good enough. There's always things to be done to it. There's always room for improvement. Because you can't look like this, because you know what? She doesn't look like this either. You know, do you think she looks like this when she gets up in the morning? And she's completely airbrushed as well. But don't worry, there's tons of things you can do. And guess what? They all cost money, and that's the key here. And think about, as I said, if women were to decide that they liked what they looked like, that they looked in the mirror and felt good about themselves, then I want you to think of what percentage of American corporate profits would go completely down. And so it's very, very important that we live in a media system that is telling us over and over again we're not good enough. We're not skinny enough, thin enough, toned enough. And do you notice something here? What do they all have in common? What's missing?
The upper half of their body.
A head, but you know, do you really need a head if you've got nice thighs? Let's face it. You know, the thighs are what's important. Now, when you think about this and cutting women into bits and pieces, how many of you women every morning do in front of the mirror what's being done to you here in the media. You stare in the mirror and you cut yourself up. This needs work, this needs work. Am I right? And everything needs work. Yeah, you might like one bit of yourself, maybe your shoulders, maybe your elbows, but on the whole, you're a work in progress. Yes, everything needs to be improved. And that's the message coming at us over and over again. And what is an eating disorder if not a kind of declaration of war on the body? Because that's what it is. And an eating disorder is complicated, and there's multiple reasons why women get eating disorders. It's not simply the media by any means. But the media is a profound way of shaping and giving you ideas about disorders. That's what it does. And it's telling you you're never good enough. And then it makes jokes of women who don't conform to those imagery. So you get banged over the head with the image over and over again till it looks something hideous like this, or like this. Can I ask you a question? Can anyone with that size waist support that amount of hair? But wait, we're going to be saved by Dove. You've all seen this, yes? Right. So we are meant to be absolutely thrilled that there are like 6 women in the media who look like us. We're meant to be really happy and grateful. And yet Dove is owned by Unilever, which owns Slim Fast, as well as Axe. Right. Now, of course, so the Dove thing is, if you're fat, or you think you're fat, you can use Dove, and if you think you're slim, or you need to slim down, you can use Slim Fast, and if you hate yourself, you can drink Slim Fast and use Dove. I mean, there's no end of what you can do with all of these things when you think of all the things they are. And that's the job of media. Right, the job of media and the job of corporations is not to do well by the consumer or the citizen. The job of corporations is to maximise profits. And if they have to have you with your head down the toilet every morning, throwing up after a meal to maximise profits, then so be it. That's the way they'll do it. And indeed, that's how it works. And now there's a new way to get you. Right, so now you have to have a baby, and within 2 minutes of giving birth, you have to go back to your pre-baby weight, otherwise you're a slop. Now, has anyone here had a baby? Anyone here had children? Okay, just a few of us, right? The women. The men don't count, okay? But the women. Let me tell you, when you have a baby, if you can get yourself into the shower by 6 p.m, you're having a good day. Forget hitting the gym. Forget any of that, right? Now, when I had my son, had you given me what all of these women have, like a nanny, like a chauffeur, like a cook, a cleaner, then I too might have got my baby weight back, right, within 2 minutes of having a baby. But that's not real women's lives. We don't have all of these things. We have real lives. And this is such a smack in the face to women who, try to do what they can, try to be a good parent, try to be, a decent homemaker, a good worker, everything that they're trying to do. And here the media comes out and tells them that nothing that you do matters. Nothing, unless you look hot. And you can be anything you want today. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a brain surgeon, but make sure you look hot. Because that's your measure of success. And anything less, you're marked as a failure. And now let's think about the world that has shifted even more. And to sort of give you an idea of how it shifted, I'm going to tell you what I wanted to call my new book, which actually the publisher said I wasn't allowed to. But I thought I had a great title for my book. It's actually called Pornland. My original title was Stepford Sluts. Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah, I like it as well, but no, they wouldn't have it. Okay. So let me give you the idea of the book, the title behind it. Was that, you remember the Stepford Wives? You're all familiar with that. That the ideal woman, the Stepford wife, was on her hands and knees cleaning the kitchen floor, waxing the kitchen floor. Okay, that was the ideal woman. And my argument was, the Stepford Wife remake of, I think it was 2006, was a complete failure. And why? Because it's a ridiculous premise in 2006 or today that the perfect woman is on her hands and knees waxing the kitchen floor. The perfect woman is still on her hands and knees. Only she's the one waxed, and she ain't waxing any kitchen floors in that position. Right? Because the perfect woman in media has shifted from the Stepford wife to the Stepford slut. So now you see women are even in a more difficult situation. Because what you have to do is, you have to act like a slut to get noticed. But, and here's the rub, you can't get defined as a slut, because if you do, you get stigmatised. So you have to look like a slut, act like a slut, and behave like a slut. And of course there's no such thing as a slut. I'm using the word slut here in terms of the way it's been thrown on women's bodies as a way to police their sexuality. But let's take the notion of the slut. And now you have to do all of these things, and you have to not get labelled a slut. But here's the big, difficult thing, is you don't get to label yourself. You don't get to decide if you cross over that line from non-slut to slut. And study after study shows, very interestingly, that if you get defined as a slut, it follows you the rest of your life, and women who get defined as sluts have more eating disorders, more depression, more alcohol and drug abuse. They, in fact, have symptoms like rape victims do. So it's very complicated here. And let me say, you see, the other slut of our time, in terms of the way the media is defined, is, of course, Paris Hilton, who became famous, why? What got her famous? The sex tape. Which, very interestingly, right, about the sex tape, was made by her then boyfriend, who at the time was married, 13 years her senior, who leaked it onto the market, and then she tried to stop it but couldn't. Now, what was interesting, when I was growing up, if a small-time celebrity had gotten a sex tape leaked, that would have been the last you would have saw of her. She would have gone away. Now, I'm not saying that's good, I'm saying that's what would have happened. Today, she got elevated. Now, you see, the thing here is that Paris Hilton can wear the slut badge with pride, because her millions act as an upmarket cleansing cream. Put that slut label on a working class girl, put it on a girl of colour, and she can't walk around with it. And this is very, very unfair to our young girls. And just think about the situation that young girls are in today, because this is a very different world to what I grew up in and some of you did. And I want to think about, I'll get to Miley Cyrus because I'm in a bit of a rush here. Miley Cyrus is a perfect example of what it means to be a slut in our culture. Because I don't know if any of you read Paris Hilton. Any of you read Paris Hilton? Any of you heard of him? He runs this website, and he's got his teeth around this woman's ankle like crazy. And she's, what, 18 years old. Now, she really tells the story of what goes on. Because in our society, women are divided into two. Young women. You're either fuckable or you're invisible. Am I right? And if I said to you, go out and buy me some fuckable clothes, you know exactly what to buy for yourself, wouldn't you? Right, now, let's think about this. So, you're fuckable or invisible, and you're an adolescent girl. No adolescent girl in her right mind wants to be invisible. That every human being needs to be visible, especially during adolescence. So now you're in a difficult position because your friends are wearing the low jeans, the tramp stamp, this thong, the high heel shoes, the pierced belly button, the midriff, because that's the only look in town. And should you choose not to look like that, then that's fine, but you're going to pay a price, and the price is going to be invisibility. And so what's really bizarre now is that we have all of these young girls behaving or looking like the slut image, and we call it choice and empowerment, as if they had a choice, as if what wasn't the only image that exists in our culture for young girls today. And so what's happened is that girls have had their choice ripped away from them, and this is no better example than Miley Cyrus. Now, Miley Cyrus had a problem. She was aging out of Disney. And in a squeaky clean Hannah Montana, she would have ended up as invisible. So she had to redefine herself into the fuckable imagery, or rather her angles did. So the best way they did it is they bring in Annie Leibovitz. You all remember this in Vanity Fair? And they get her to define her within the fuckability. Of course, everyone says they're sorry and they didn't mean it, but this was a very, very clever thing to do. Because it's worked, because she's now visible in a fuckable world. And so, and that's her father, by the way. Would you like to sit with your father like that? And now this is Elle. And she is the perfect story of what it means to go from basically to age out of Disney and into fuckability. She had absolutely no choice. And then what's interesting, we end up with women like Madonna or Nicole Kidman in their 40s and 50s having to look the same way. So here you've got Madonna, you know, in her 50s, who's got no more sense at 50 than she had at 20, looking fuckable. And here you've got her 30 years younger, looking the same thing. Because this is the only image on offer for women, if you want to be visible in this world. And so this has profound impact on the way that girls construct their identities. And this was from last month's French Vogue. Now, what effect is this having on young girls? and young women. The best ever I heard described to me was an incarcerated child rapist who I like to call Dick. Now, Dick told me, looking me in the face when he was talking about raping his 10-year-old stepdaughter, he told me the culture did a lot of the grooming for them. Now, grooming is what perpetrators do to their victims. They get them ready. They tell them how beautiful they are, they isolate them, and they get them ready to be raped, so that by the time the perpetrator rapes the child believes that that's what they're good for them, basically. That's what they are, they're sexual. And it's a slow, long-term process, so that when perpetrators eventually make the move on the victim, she or he is ready for the abuse. Now, what I'm arguing is that we used to live in a world where we had individual perpetrators grooming individual victims, and now the culture is a perpetrator. We live with a collective perpetrator who is grooming our girls for sex, to say yes, yes, yes. Because you only can say yes to sex if it's meaningful, if you can say no to sex. And that's what's difficult in our culture. See, my generation couldn't say yes, your generation can't say no. Both of which are oppressive. Because lost in all of that is our authentic sexuality and what we want and how we want to live our sexuality out. Not how men tell us or not how the culture tells us. Now, you see, you have to groom the girls because they're going to go and date the men. And the men are now being groomed by the porn industry. And I haven't got time to go into the history of the porn industry, so I'm going to jump. Okay. The porn industry today is worth over $97 billion a year. They produce over 13,000 porn movies a year. There are 420 million porn websites. There is a huge industry now called pornography. And virtually every male who is growing up in the United States of America today is growing up on pornography. And we have never before brought up an entire generation of men on hardcore pornography. Previously, they would look for their father's playbook. This is a different world today. I'm going to take you through some of the world of the average pornography. That the boy, they said the average age of first viewing porn is around 11 or 12. And I'm going to introduce you to the world that they see. And this changed drastically because of women like Jenna Jameson, who is now the porn. You've all heard of Jenna Jameson, yeah? Put your hands up if you've heard of Jenna Jameson. Right. This is, again, completely new. Never before has there been a woman in pornography that everybody would have heard. Thanks to women like Oprah Winfrey, thanks to E! Entertainment, who basically sell her as a success story, missing out the real bits of her life, of course, which was that she was raped over and over again, left for dead at 16 by a gang rape, nearly dead at 20 with drugs. I mean, she's had the life of most porn women. The only difference to her is that she's actually ended up 30 alive and wealthy, which is very, very unusual for women in pornography. But her life is very much like that. And of course, she's been a major one as a sort of recruitment tool into the industry because poor working class women who are looking at minimum wage jobs see a way out. They don't really know what they're getting into. And of course, you can't tell the story of pornography without telling the story of Howard Stern, who even the industry says had a major effect on him, on the porn sales. Every time he brought in a porn star, the sales and rentals of porn videos went up. Now let me take you through the industry briefly. The industry today is no longer split into softcore and hardcore. There is virtually no softcore pornography left on the internet. Now, you can find 1,000 subgenres. There's sort of more women-friendly porn, this type of porn, that type of porn, but that's not what the industry talks about. When the industry talks about pornography, they talk about two things. They talk about either features or gonzo. Now, features, this is an example, is what men and women tend to watch together. It's what men often want their girlfriends to watch so they can groom them into porn sex. And it is body-punishing sex, but it is not the same as the second most profitable type of pornography, which the industry calls gonzo, which is in-your-face, hardcore, brutal, body-punishing sex. One of the fathers of gonzo is a man called Max Hardcore, who on his website writes, "I force girls to drink my piss, fist fuck them, ream their asses and drill their throats until they puke." and puke they do. He invented vomit pornography. I'm going to take you through some of the main scenes in pornography. Now I want to make it clear, what you're going to see now is just what happens when I type porn into Google. And all the images I get to within 15 to 20 seconds, which means your average 11-year-old can get to in what, 10 seconds? Right, so let's just go through some of the images. First of all, the most startling thing is that women in pornography are never referred to as women. They are, in fact, cum dumpsters, cunts, whores, sluts, you name it. Very, very important. You have to basically say these women are not human beings. Because you see, every man who jerks off to pornography, who is watching this brutal sex, has a mother he loves. He has a sister he loves. He has a girlfriend he loves. And if he in any way feels empathy for the woman he is masturbating to, it will kill his erection stone dead. So, to salvage, to maintain the porn experience, you have to make sure that that bitch whore cunt, she likes it up the ass like that. She likes it in pain. She's not like your mother, sister, girlfriend or whatever. She's different. And this is key. This is what the Nazis did to the Jews by calling them kanks. It's what whites do to blacks by calling them niggers. It's what heterosexuals do to homosexuals by calling them fags. You strip them of their humanity, and in place of a human being, you have an ugly stereotype. And then that legitimizes what you do. So very, very major in pornography days, gagging. This is where the penis is so far down the throat that it activates the gag reflex, as in Gag on My Cock, where the women are choking. And the scene is played out with them choking. And they often put very dark mascara on the women, so that their tears are running down their face, which is visual, empirical evidence that they are indeed choking. An example on Gag Me and Then Fuck Me. Do you know what we'd say to things like romance and foreplay? We say, fuck off, this is not another site with half erect wieners. We take gorgeous young bitches and do what every man would really like to do. We make them gag till their makeup starts running, and then they get all other holes sore, etc., and then we give them a sticky back. Now, very interestingly, it says here, we take gorgeous young bitches and do what every man would really like to do. Now, let's think about this. These are businessmen, they're capitalists, right? They're out to pull you into their industry. And then I think of my now son, who's in his 20s, and what would have happened if at 12 or 13 he would have typed porn into Google, and he would have got on Gag Me and Then Fuck Me. And I'm thinking how my 12-year-old son would have been horrified. But yet, you see, he would have been told by them that every man would really like to do it. And here would be a 12-year-old boy defining himself into masculinity. He doesn't know what masculinity is. He doesn't know what he looks like yet. But he's being told, if you want to be a man, this is what you really like to do. So they know exactly how to get these boys, to get them to keep on these brutal websites. Because for many of them, I am sure they see this and they think they freak. But they're aroused, they're erect, and they misinterpret their erection, thinking that they're aroused to this when they don't understand. They're being manipulated by the text. We then have a lot of anal sex. Now, anal sex is very important in pornography because it is a way to deliver pain. As, for example, this from the copy from Anally Ripped Whores. We at Pure Filth know exactly what you want, and we're giving it to you. Chicks being ass-fucked till their sphincters are pink, puffy, and totally blown out. Adult diapers just might be in store for these whores when their work is done. Now, I'm not looking at the worst. I want you to know I don't go anywhere near the worst of the pornography. And this is the average pornography that is out there when you put porn into Google. Acts such as DP, double penetration, acts such as 2 penises in the vagina, 2 penises in the anus. The standard pornography is 1 woman, 3 men, a penis in the vagina, the anus, the mouth, as she's being called bitch, whore, slut, as she's being smacked, as her hair's being pulled, and as she's being spat upon. These are standard movies today. This is what the men in your life, the men you mix with, are masturbating to. Not every single one, of course, but the majority of them. And then we have the new thing, ATM, ass to mouth. What this is the penis goes straight into the anus and then straight into the mouth without washing. Now let me tell you, when I wrote my book, a lot of people in the porn industry contacted me to tell me, actually, that I was exactly right. And I want to tell you, there's an organisation called AIM, Adult Industry Medical Health Association. This is their website. And they list the type of things to watch out for. For example, they say women in pornography get gonorrhea of the eye. Has anyone heard of gonorrhea of the eye? That's what you get because there's so much ejaculation going in the eye. Okay, now let me tell you, the guy who used to be the major consultant for AIM called me to tell me, he said, I want to tell you my story because I can't stand it because nobody's listening to it. So he told me this very interesting story. He used to do the throat, the swabs for the women in the porn industry. And he would swab the vagina, the anus, and the throat. And then they would see if they got any infections. And he said to me, one day my lab assistant comes in and says, we've messed up the swabs, we've mislabeled the cultures. And he goes in, and why have they mislabeled the cultures? Because in the cultures marked throat, they've got fecal matter infections. And they think they've got anal swabs, and they've made a mistake. Well, no. The women are getting fecal matter infections in their throat because of ATM, because they're getting feces in their mouths from the ATM. The other big problem for women in pornography is their anuses drop out of their body. They have to have their anuses set up. It's called an anal prolapse. And the level of anal sex is so body punishing that they basically can't tolerate it. And even the industry says the average shelf life for women in pornography today is about 3 months because their bodies can't tolerate it. The racism in pornography, especially black women, as in pimpmyblackteen.com. And for men, now the image of black men in pornography is very interesting because of course it's always a white woman and a black man. And what you see over and over again is the idea that black men are rapists of white women. And this has been a long-held stereotype in America that has legitimized, as I said, lynching of black men. And then we have Latino women exploited, and of course Asian women exploited. Now I know I have to finish, so what I want to do is just to end to tell you where it's going. The next frontier is children. This is legal. This is legal because she's 18 but looks like a child. These images are now legal from 2003 when the pornography industry's lobbying organisation, the Free Speech Coalition, lobbied the Ashcroft Supreme Court to make it legal to have images where girls or women look younger than 18. The Ashcroft Court said yes, and this is what we end up now with images like this, first time with Daddy, Daddy's whore. So the answer to this? Well, of course, the only answer, I would argue, is to become a feminist. This is from Maxim. This is evidently how you cure a feminist. You start here and you end there. Well, my job is to start here and end there without the cigarette. You cannot understand pornography outside of understanding a feminist analysis. So there's things you can do, and I suggest you go on to, you buy my book. Let me tell you about capitalism. Right, you buy my book, for every book you buy I get $1. 20 years work, so that's how capitalism works. But you should buy it anyway because it's a good read. And my website, gaildines.com, and then go on to stoppornculture.org. And also, we are having anti-porn trainings in Boston in June. For anyone who's interested, they're free. 2 days in Boston. We have a 2-day training, a 3-day training, and a 5-day training. So go on the website and you'll see under events, click on. Now let me tell you, this is very important for your life here, because your sexuality has indeed been hijacked by the pornography industry. They've come in and they've done a stealth attack on this culture. And there has to be a way in which we figure out how to fight that. Because do you really want your sexuality ripped away? Do you want a plasticized, generic, formulaic image of what sex should be like? Because if you do, go to pornography, because that's what you get. Or do you hunger for a more authentic, creative sexuality that speaks to who you are and your life experiences as a human being? So let's think about ways in which we can fight back to the pornography industry. And I just want to end by saying what makes the world worth living. And I was on a radio show in Canada, and the radio show host said to me, Gail Dines, aren't you pushing a boulder up a hill? And you know what? I said, of course I'm pushing a boulder up a hill. But that's what you do to make the world livable. You push boulders up hills. The labour movement pushed their boulder up a hill. The African American community pushed their boulder up a hill. Feminism pushed their boulder up a hill. We have to push boulders up hills. That's the only way the world is worth living. And so what's very important is to think of yourself more as becoming an active citizen in the world that you live in, rather than a passive consumer, which is how the world wants us to be. So I know people have to leave, so I'm going to let people go now, and those who want to stay for Q&A, we're going to open it up to question and answer. And I hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it.